Thank you for checking us out here on Daily Excellence today. The show will start momentarily. Don't forget to check us out at DailyExcellence.org, where on our website you will have direct access to our Telegram channels, the prayer room, the newsroom, and our chat room. You will also have the opportunity for live streaming on Newsmax and other news channels that you may not be able to get access to in your home, but we have those here on our website, and including Christian broadcasting as well. We also have a hub of conservative news outlets that you can check out on our channel under breaking news articles from Not the Bee, Newsbusters, Newsmax, The Federalist, Blaze TV, The Daily Wire, One American News, Breitbart, TheDaily.com, Daily Caller, Epoch Times, and other news articles that are conservative based and that are available for you to check out here on Daily Excellence. For more news, you can click under more news at the bottom of the page, and you will get currency updates, monkeypox updates, coronavirus updates, pandemic, the latest news on the Ukrainian and Russian war, earthquakes, earth changes, what's happening with weather and space weather, things that are taking place in the outer space area, unidentified flying objects in Area 51, politics, religion, Supreme Court rulings, lockdowns, worldwide news, and other areas of news and interest. All of these can be found here on DailyExcellence.org. And as always, make sure you check out all of our latest videos here on our YouTube channel at Daily Excellence. All of our videos will be posted on the weekends and throughout the week, so make sure you guys check those out. And check out all of our feature channels in our feature channels section with Daily Direction, which is a backup to Daily Excellence, Earth Changes Channel, NYPrepper, Christina, and Jacob Barrientos. So thank you guys very much. We will be starting the show very shortly. Good evening, everyone. This is Pastor Anthony here with your Daily Excellence. And if you guys can do me a huge favor in the chat room, if you guys can let me know that you guys are hearing me good and that I'm coming through loud and clear, I would really appreciate you guys just kind of sending that on through. And we'll get that going here. And of course, tonight we have a special guest that will be coming on here in just a few moments, and that's Greg from NYPrepper will be joining us in just a minute, and we are getting thumbs up. Thank you, Letitia, Johnny Knight, Chris. Thank you guys for letting me know that we got good audio. Let's see who's in the chat real quick. Patricia, thank you very much. We got Abba's girl in. We've got Earth Changes Channel. Brother Jim is joining us. He's modding for us tonight. So we're glad that you're here, Brother Jim. And, of course, make sure you guys check out his YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Brother Jim's got a lot of good content over his channel. He just did a video the other night. And, of course, he is on Telegram as well. And so make sure you check out all of his Telegram channels over there with Earth Changes Channel News and Earth Changes Chat. And so thank you, Brother Jim, for being on. We got Lakes, 10,000 Lakes BC. Thank you very much for being on and modding for us tonight as well. D-Mar's on. Bradley is on. And so tonight, Robert, good to see you on. Hola, sir. Tonight I did instruct my moderators earlier today by email. We will not... this channel is a channel that respects all ministries and all channels. We don't make fun of anybody. We don't give anyone a hard time. If you have any negative chats in the comments, anything that's derogatory, anything like that, my moderators have been instructed to delete those comments. We'll give you a warning. If you do not heed that warning, you will be removed off of tonight's live stream. And so we just do that because we want to keep a clean atmosphere. We want to keep a good atmosphere. We know everybody has a difference of opinions on things, and that's okay. But we want to make sure that we are respectful to one another because we are all fellow Christians and believers of Jesus Christ, and we are about unity and not separation. All right, separation doesn't do any good for anyone, and we don't want to represent the body of Christ in a negative light. So that's what I've instructed our moderators to do, and they will do a great job for us tonight, no doubt about that. Cindy Fields, good to see you. And Johnny Knight, good to see you. Miss Joker, glad that you came on tonight. So we have a lot of great people here coming on in the chat room. We're a little bit late starting tonight, and so we're giving a little bit of time for everyone to come in. I know everybody's wondering why we are not getting started. Why am I talking so much? About a few minutes late. So, Belinda, good to see you. Shalom. Glad that you've joined us. Johnny Knight, glad that you have come on as well. And so tonight, in just a moment, we're going to have New York Prepper. He's going to join us in just a minute. And so, BJ, glad that you've come on. And so, like I said, New York Prepper will be on here in just a minute. And so he's going to help us talk about things that are going on with Ukraine and things of that nature. And we're going to try also getting a conversation about the upcoming winter and grand solar minimum, which is actually a conversation that we haven't talked about too much here on the channel, or it's been a while anyway. AJ, good to see you. Gypsy Lizzie, good to see you tonight, everyone. And so good to have BJ on here. She's going to be modding for us tonight. Cat Sat, good to have you on. So thank you for being here. And so we are filling up tonight with 125. Please make sure as we go through the evening, give our moderators some love. Go and check out our descriptions below. We have New York Preppers information down there. And while we do that, let me take you over to New York Prepper's YouTube channel real quick for those of you who may not know who he is. And let's see sorry about that, guys. Gotta switch over to, there we go. All right, so this is New York Prepper's YouTube channel, and he does a lot of reporting about the Ukraine and Russian situation with emergency alerts and red alerts and things like that, keeping you up to date with all the movements that are taking place over there. He's also a prepper, and so he gives a lot of advice about what to do in certain situations, what to do in nuclear situations, what to do if power goes out, things like that. He's also has a lot of videos dealing with firearms and how to use the proper way of using them. What's the best type of ammo to use, things like that. And so he's got a lot of great content on here, a lot of good videos, and he's a Christian gentleman. And so he believes in Jesus Christ and has faith in our Lord and Savior tonight. And so it's good to have New York Prepper here. So if you don't know who he is, I would advise that you check out his channel. Hit the link for his channel is in our descriptions box below, and you can get direct access there. He's also on our main channel under feature channels, and so you can check him out that way as well. And so make sure that you guys do those things there. And so I'm going to play one video, an intro video for you here in just a second, and then once we get done with that, New York Prepper is going to come on. And so New York Prepper, I know you're in here tonight. If you want to go ahead and start calling in, and we'll get you set up, and then we're going to go ahead and play this video real quick to get us started tonight. It would help if I turn my mic on, right, guys? All right, I think everyone can hear me now. Like I said, I did that video about a year ago, and so I thought it'd be a good segue and a good entrance for New York Prepper, who is live with us. And so, Greg from New York Prepper, we are glad that you are here with us, sir. If you want to kind of just let everybody know you're here, and also kind of give us a little bit of a background to how you developed your YouTube channel and kind of what kind of work, what it is that you do on your channel.
Oh yeah, sure. I'm really humbled to be here, and thanks for having me. So, yeah, I do prepping. I do news alerts, news updates, so like geopolitical stuff, any kind of breaking news. I cover any breaking news and like events that can affect us all. I cover that. I particularly focus on the world's hot zones like Ukraine, the Middle East, Asia. I also pay attention to biblical events that are going on as well. If there's something related to Bible prophecy, I try to share anything related to that. I do prepping, of course, all kinds of different stuff related to prepping. And then I do a lot of firearms stuff as well, testing different types of ammunition, reviewing different gear. Same thing with prepping. I review prepping gear, whether it's, camouflage, holsters, backpacks, whatever. So I do mostly prepping, firearms, and breaking news. And that's kind of like my bread and butter. And then I throw in some personal stuff, because prepping is a very heavy topic. So is, like breaking news. So I try to mix in some fun things. That's why I do like ammunition testing, ballistics testing, because it's fun, watching shooting guns and testing different ammo. It's fun for me. It's fun for my viewers. It's kind of a stress relief. And then I'll do some outdoor stuff. If I go hiking or hunting, I film, so I try to mix in some lighter stuff too, But as far as how I started my channel, I was a prepper, I guess, you can call prepper for, I think I started around 2008 after the financial collapse. When Obama first got elected, things just really went downhill. And, it was just very noticeable to me. As soon as he got elected, things were just spiraling out of control, and different things going on around the world. At that time, Russia actually invaded Georgia, which caught my attention. And then North Korea was starting to test their nukes. Then we had the financial collapse, unemployment was high. So I was really starting to study up on like end times prophecy and just having concern about where the future is going. And I said, I better start getting ready. I mean, I was always an outdoorsman. I always had a love for the outdoors since I was a kid. So as far as like firearms go, I was always squared away with firearms. I was always a good shooter and very knowledgeable with that stuff. And then, working in security, physical security, I have, self-defense experience. So I just needed to really focus on building up like food supplies, setting up bug out bags, having plans, learning skills that I didn't already have. And so that's how I got into prepping. And then, later on, I thought maybe it would be a good idea to start my own channel because I just thought that, there's certain things that I know that I didn't see a lot of people talking about. And so I felt that I could contribute to the prepping community with my particular experiences and skills that I have that other people didn't have. So I wanted to kind of just share, what I know. And then it just took off. When I started my channel, it was very small. For like the first 2 years, I only had like 500 subscribers. And then it just took off, and it's become like a major part of my life. I used to just make videos like kind of here and there whenever I felt like it. And now it's like a major part of my life now. So but I don't regret anything. It's definitely been fun. I've met a lot of nice people, and, as bad as YouTube is with certain things, you do meet a lot of good people. So that's the silver lining, but that's pretty much it.
All right. Well, thank you for letting us know that. And you got a couple people here. AJ Hope said that they just started they followed your channel during the medical emergency of 2020. Patricia Thomas just says she just subscribed to your channel. So we got some people coming over and subscribing to you right now over there. And so thank you for letting us know kind of the history of what got you started in your journey of making your own channel and things like that. And I know I really enjoy the videos that you make when using all the ammo and things that you do. I watch those quite a bit, and so I find it very intriguing.
Thank you.
Watching those videos. And of course I do watch the updates and things that you put out as well. And so well, let's kind of get started in this, and I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off tonight and get going here. Of course, Greg, you know, we've had a few events that have taken place over the last let's go a little further back. Over the last few weeks, we saw in Nord Stream 1 and 2 got disrupted and blown up. We saw the bridge yesterday get taken out. We've got a rumor today of stealth bombers being delivered to Poland. And so, sir, I'm going to ask you your opinion on what do you think happened with the Nord Stream 1 and 2? Just who do you think, you know, in your opinion, perpetrated that particular scenario, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I'm kind of like torn between what to believe. There's a few different possibilities, and it's hard for me to really fully. It's not like I'm in one particular camp, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, there's a lot of people that think that America did it. And then there's other people who think that Russia did it. And then there's some people who think that it was some kind of a New World Order plot to, you know, instigate a fight between Russia and the U.S. I'm leaning, it could be, it's really, honestly, it's hard for me to say. I haven't really researched it enough because there's been just so much going on the last week or so with the Crimean Bridge getting taken down and other stuff. But there's a few possibilities. One, America did it basically just to show Russia that, you know, we can do damage to you if we want, like kind of like a warning, a soft warning to Russia, like, listen, you know, just because our president is 70 something years old doesn't mean that we still don't have some serious capabilities and we can shut you down in different ways if we want. That's what I think it could have been. I'm leaning to that a little bit. Basically like a soft warning, you know, listen, Putin, we're not going to send troops to Ukraine at the moment. We're not going to get involved, but we still have some different capabilities that we can ruin your day, you know. That's one possibility. I'm kind of leaning to that, actually. But there's also other possibilities. For example, it could have been a Russian false flag. Right. They could have blown up their own pipeline and then blame it on America or blame it on NATO. And then that would give them a reason to, you know, go to war with us or launch nukes or, you know, whatever. That's a possibility, too. You know, Russia has a history of doing false flags. Like when the Chechen War started, there was the whole reason for the Chechen War was a bombing of a school, a Russian school, and Putin blamed it on Chechen Muslim extremists. But there's evidence that it was actually the Russian KGB that blew up this school and basically did a false flag to get Russians to hate the Chechens and then give a reason to invade. You know, every government does false flags. So that's a possibility. Another possibility is that it could have been the Illuminati, the New World Order. You know, they could have went in there and did something to try to instigate this nuclear war between America and Russia to, you know, achieve their ultimate goal, which is depopulation of the world and setting up the New World Order and one world government, one world religion, one world currency. So those are the three main possibilities. I'm kind of torn between them, but I'm leaning to, this, that this was just America basically kind of like telling Putin, listen, we still have some serious capabilities, so that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay. Yeah, and I kind of agree with you. I've actually thought of those scenarios as well, especially when you look at just how it was done. There's not too many countries, I would say, on planet Earth that could actually pull that off. The Navy SEALs would be very good at pulling something like that off, pulling a job like that off. Going in underwater, placing what needs to be placed there, and then you know what? It's one of those things that could have been timed. That could have been put there weeks in advance before the actual event. And I've also thought about the false flag. And so there's several different perspectives there that could have happened. And so yeah, I'm in agreement with you on that. Whatever it was definitely designed to escalate tensions and definitely designed to create chaos. And especially if you are, if you're watching us tonight and you're living in Europe, that's really going to cause you some significant issues in the coming winter, which we'll get into that subject here in just a little bit. And so Earth Changes Channel says he's got a question for you, Greg. And so he says, Greg, your video was awesome today. Can you give us a brief spec of the capability of the B2s, because your information was absolutely correct. So he's Brother Jim over at Earth Changes. He's wanting you to give us an idea of the capability of those B2s that got delivered to Poland today.
Yeah, so the B2 stealth bomber, it's been around for a while. Since the 90s, it replaced the F-117 Nighthawk, which I think you're probably around the same age as me. If you remember, during the first Gulf War, they used those F-117s. I don't know if you remember that or not. They used those in the Gulf War. So the B-2 replaced the F-117s, and they've been in service for the last 30 years or so. And they're basically the air leg of our nuclear triad. So if you don't know what a nuclear triad is, the United States is the only country in the world that has a full nuclear triad. No other country has it. There's some countries that claim to have it, like Russia or China, but they don't truly have a nuclear triad. And what that means is that we can deliver nuclear weapons from land, sea, or air. That's critical in a nuclear war. And if you're fighting a nuclear war, which sounds like it's unwinnable, if you're in that situation, having those capabilities from land, sea, and air basically makes you unbeatable, because no matter where they strike you, you can counterattack from anywhere. So there's no way that they can neutralize our nuclear arsenal completely, versus Russia, for instance. Most of their nuclear arsenal is land-based, and they have some subs. So we could wipe out most of their arsenal just by targeting their missile silos in Siberia, and they could launch back at us from their subs, but they don't have a lot of subs. So we have subs, we have silos, and then we also have the B-2 bombers. And so the B-2 bombers are basically the most stealthy plane in the world ever created, and to this day, it's still the most stealthy plane in the world. It can penetrate any air defense. There's so much top secret information about it that it's really hard to understand the true capabilities of it. But it's designed not only to hide from radar, but it can hide from infrared satellites and other things too. It has special, the way that the exhaust is designed, the exhaust pipes are specially designed to hide the thermal signature from the heat of the exhaust. So if you were to look at a B-2 bomber with a thermal scope, you wouldn't even see that it's there. Like normally, like a car, you're driving your car, the engine gets hot, so you would see like a little red spot at the front of your car or on the wheels because the friction on the road. But a stealth bomber, when it's flying through the air, you will not see basically any thermal signature. So it can hide from thermal, it can hide from radar. There's just so many capabilities, but it is a very powerful system because it's a massive plane. It can carry 16 nuclear bombs, okay? Each nuclear bomb that it can carry is a B-83. The B-83 has a blast yield of 1.2 megatons. So I'm trying to do the math in my head. That's like the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs were like 10 to 20 kilotons. So you're looking at 100 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb. And that's just one bomb, okay? This thing can carry 16 of those bombs, okay? So all you would need is literally one B-2, and it could fly into Russia and just drop bombs on all like major cities in Russia or military targets, and they could basically do devastating damage to Russia with just one of those planes. And we have, as far as official public knowledge goes, we have like 20 of them. But the U.S. Congress, they had, when they originally were building these things, when they passed the budget for them, they allocated enough money to build like 100 of them or 200. So there could very well be a lot more than what they say. They say we only have 20. I personally believe we have about 100 of them. So it's a massive capability. Those B-2s are incredible. Each one can carry 16 of those B-83 bombs. Not only that, but they can also carry stealthy cruise missiles that they can put nuclear warheads onto them. And those stealthy cruise missiles can be launched from 2,000 miles away, and they can still hit a target with pinpoint accuracy. So, they could literally launch one of these stealthy cruise missiles from France, and they could still hit Moscow with it, and it would have a nuclear warhead on it. So they can carry those. They can carry conventional bombs, if they want to do like carpet bombing or whatever. So it's a very powerful system. And for the U.S. to move one to Poland, which is right on the front line, right next to Russia, that's a huge move. That's, because we don't have that many of them to begin with. And it's such a powerful system. It's basically kind of like the equivalent of the Cuban Missile Crisis in a sense, moving that kind of equipment right on Russia's border. I don't know if they're armed or not. I don't know if they have nukes or not. I don't know. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes. Officially, NATO is not supposed to have any nukes in Eastern Europe. Mm-hmm. And that was when NATO was founded. They signed an agreement with Russia not to position any nukes in the Eastern Bloc countries, east of Germany, basically. So most of NATO's nuclear weapons are stored in Western Europe. But a B-2 could easily fly over there, load up, and then fly back. It has a range of up to 6,000 nautical miles on one fuel tank. So that's just incredible. Like if you think about a typical passenger plane, if you fly from, let's say, New York to Germany, that's like just enough to get by on one tank of fuel. With a stealth bomber, it could go back and forth from, let's say, New York to Europe like 4 times without refueling, So it's incredible. It's a very powerful capability, and it's definitely a way for the U.S. to send a message to Russia, and also to reassure Poland that, that they're not going to be left out in the dark, because Poland requested to share nuclear weapons with NATO because they're right on the front line. And because of the NATO founding treaty that they signed with Russia, they can't move those nukes from Germany to Poland. So I think this was the U.S.'s way of giving Poland what they want without violating that NATO treaty, because they can move that B-2 there, and they're not violating any treaties with Russia. And as long as it's not armed, what can Russia say? I mean, if it's an unarmed plane, there's nothing wrong with that, right? But if you move a missile launcher into Poland, that's going to draw a lot of attention from Russia. So this is like kind of a low-key way of increasing the capability of NATO, you know, to strike back at Russia if it had to. Not only that, but because they can carry conventional bombs, they used the B-2s extensively in the Balkans wars to carry out precision strikes on the Milosevic regime in Serbia. And so they could theoretically use these B-2s to fly over Ukraine and strike critical targets like the Crimean Bridge. And the Russians won't know that it was the U.S. that did it. I mean, you know, how would they be able to tell? It's completely stealthy. So theoretically, you know, they could use that B-2 to carry out clandestine strikes on Russian troops and Russian military infrastructure in Ukraine. And then obviously also if they had to go into Ukraine, let's say if Russia nukes Ukraine and they feel like they want to punish Russia for that, then having that B-2 there is tremendous, because what could happen is they could fly over all those areas that are occupied by Russia, and they could bomb air defense sites, Russian air defense. They can bomb radar sites. They can bomb bridges. They can bomb military equipment, ammo depots, things like that. And so it's a huge capability. So, and yes, they also, I saw Earth Changes mention something in the chat about the fighter jets. They also have 12 F-22s now in Poland. So that's also a huge capability. To have 12 F-22s is massive. So yeah, it's a very capable plane, that's for sure.
Yes. Well, thank you for your analysis on that plane. And we have 174 people here now in the chat. And so if you guys can do us a big favor, support what we're doing tonight by giving this video a thumbs up, like, share, subscribe to Daily Excellence, and also subscribe over to New York Prepper. I saw that Lakes was been throwing up some links, and so we appreciate that. And so yeah, let's kind of discuss the reason that Poland has these jets now, because you just mentioned, that they actually asked for these jets kind of a long time ago, if I remember correctly, a little bit closer to when all this began. But it seems like the urgency to equip NATO came on the heels of the bridge incident that we had just a couple of days ago, where we saw the bridge that connects Russia to Crimea area together. It's kind of Putin's baby over there, that got blown up. And, rumor is, and I don't have a whole lot of, information to back this up, but it's looking like that the Ukrainians have taken credit for doing that. And that's what the rumor's coming out, and we're seeing that Russia is going along with that rumor. And in the last 48 hours, we've seen a lot of heavy artillery, a lot of heavy bombing taking place in civilian areas of Ukraine. And a lot of this, and this is what the news is reporting, at least on Telegram, a lot of this has to do with the new general that Putin put in power. Supposedly, this guy is... I guess very ruthless is what they're saying. And so we see things being amped up in that area. Greg, how important was that move, whether it was the Ukrainians that did it, maybe it was the same group who did the Nord Stream 1 and 2, that did that, and how important, or what was the significance, I should say, of that bridge and what took place, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's a great point that, this bridge attack happened around this little bit after the Nord Stream situation. It could have been the same group. That's a great point. Yeah, it's critical because it's the only way that Russia that's a direct connection from Crimea to Russia. They have, of course, now that they conquered that land bridge, southeastern Ukraine, they have a strip of land that they conquered. So, of course, they could move troops that way into Crimea. But by doing that, they're going to be exposing themselves to Ukrainian artillery and guided missiles that they now have. The HIMARS. The HIMARS have a long range. They're guided rockets that they can basically, if they see that Russia's moving trains of tanks and stuff like that down into Crimea, they can hit those trains and blow them up, So it's going to be much more difficult for Russia to reinforce Crimea now. And that bridge gave them, access into Crimea. It has a road component and a train component. And so it's absolutely critical for this war, especially for the southern part of the war in the Crimea area and Kherson, which is a critical city that the Ukrainians are about to take back. They're about to encircle it. And Kherson is absolutely critical for the Ukrainians to take it back. So I think they timed it in such a way, assuming that there was no group behind it trying to instigate things. But if this was just, if we're just talking about like basic military strategy, they obviously wanted to blow this bridge because they're anticipating a big push into Kherson and maybe even into Crimea, that could be what Ukraine is trying to do now, is they might just go, trying to think of the proper word, they might just go big and just go right for Crimea, which is many people would think is unthinkable. But they could be trying to do something like that, which is very risky, but it would also have a huge reward for the Ukrainians if they were able to push the Russians out of Crimea. That would be psychologically devastating to Putin and the Russian military. So yeah, that's basically with that bridge, the Russians could reinforce Crimea and they would be out of range of Ukrainian missiles and artillery. Now that bridge is blown, it's still working, by the way, but they can only get cars across it. They can't bring heavy equipment across it because the explosion, they don't know how it fatigued the bridge. Some of those spans could be fatigued. They look like they're solid, but they're really not. So they've been letting cars go across, but they can't bring, tanks after tanks after tanks because it could collapse. So that it's not they're gonna eventually fix it, but in the near term, the next 2 to 3 months, while they're fixing it, and then plus winter's coming, it's going to take a little while for them to fix it. And they don't really know the full extent of the damage because the thing is I have someone in my family that was an engineer, and the thing with bridges is that it doesn't take much to really fatigue certain components, and it looks like it's solid, and then it just suddenly collapses, So they're not going to be able to bring like full train loads of equipment across like they were before, where they could put 100 tanks on one train, and then they could just send 100 tanks right into Crimea to reinforce the front. They can't do that now. Now they may have to only send 5 tanks or 3 tanks at a time, which is much slower. And then of course the road part of it also hinders them too. So.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for answering that question there about that. And it's very important to be able to get things back and forth across that bridge, which is obviously the reason why the Russians built it. And of course, because that happened, we did see an escalation. And these questions that I'm asking tonight, we're leading to the main question of the night here concerning this subject. But And that's going to be, the question that I'm going to ask you, Greg, in just a few moments is going to be, where do you think all this is leading? But before I get there, I want to kind of, reiterate a little bit of what's happened in the last 48 hours. Greg over at NYPrepper just talked about the bridge, what it means, how significant that was. And of course, in those last 48 hours, we've seen, Russia retaliate. We've seen, relentless bombings in Ukraine. And then we get a report today of huge military reinforcements coming out of Barcelonian Army, which are stationed on the border with Ukraine on different fronts, including trains with dozens of T-72 tanks, in this attempt to split the Ukrainian army into two different fronts, thus weakening it. And so the question that was raised in this article is are these real attacks? Do the Ukrainians do not know, and therefore they are being forced to send large forces there at an expense of the big battle with Russia, which is getting closer. And so that's kind of what was coming out this evening on this. And so I was going to see what your thought on this particular article that came out here on Telegram was. And then I'm going to ask you the big question there. Where do you think all this is going? Because I do believe that this question here is going to be leading into that. And so what do you think about this huge military reinforcements coming from the Barcelonian army, which was stationed on the border with Ukraine on two different fronts, including trains with dozens of T-72 tanks? What do you think this is about, Greg?
Oh, you mean Belarus, right?
Belarus,
yeah, Belarus. I mean, I think it could be two different things. I've said for a while now that I think Belarus is at some point they're going to try to cross the border, depending on how the war would go. But basically, Putin is using Belarus as like a wild card for himself. And basically what Putin is doing is, it's just like a chess game. He's putting pressure on the Ukrainians by building up the troops on the border there, which would force Ukraine to move some of their troops from the southern and eastern part where they're trying to take their territory back. And they've been gaining a lot of territory back in those areas, like in Kherson and the eastern part of Ukraine, where they literally recaptured like 3,000 square miles in like 1 week, which is just insane. That's like basically like the whole state of Connecticut or Massachusetts they recaptured in like 5 days. So Putin obviously wants to slow down the Ukrainians from continuing to recapture territory because, Russia's hurting. The media, the media is covering it, but the Russians are obviously not going to admit that they're hurting, but they are. That's why Putin had to do a partial mobilization. It's not a partial mobilization. It's a full draft. He just used the word partial mobilization because he wanted to make it seem like it wasn't a full draft, but it's basically a full draft, drafting Russians to fight in Ukraine up to, I heard as much as 1 million. But all these Russians have to be trained. They have to be equipped. And by the time they get ready to be sent to the front lines, it could be months, and because they're taking people off the street that have no military experience and drafting them. He knows that Ukraine has the momentum now, and he wants to open up another front and stall them out so they don't nibble away at more and more territory while he's waiting for his reinforcements to arrive. And by the way, those reinforcements are not going to be, we're not talking about Spetsnaz or some elite soldiers. These are drafted troops that many of them don't have military experience, or many of them have low motivation because they were forced to fight. It's not like a professional army where people join, like the Navy SEALs. Guys that join the Navy SEALs, they want to be a Navy SEAL. That's what they want to do it. Versus when you're drafted, you're forced to fight, so you don't have the same motivation. discipline is not there. The motivation of the fighting force is not there, you know. Mm-hmm. So it's not going to be like the first wave of the invasion was Putin's professional army. Basically, he sent in his best troops initially because he wanted to take as much land as possible and end the war quick. And he thought that by sending in his best guys first, that it would achieve that goal quicker rather than sending in reservists and draftees, you know. But he wasn't expecting this resistance, and so a lot of his best troops got killed. So now he's resorted to doing a draft, and so he knows that it's going to be a little while before they come to the front line. So he needs to do something to plug the hole, basically, you know. And so he's putting pressure on the Ukrainians by building up the forces in the northern part. And I mentioned this months ago. I said that this would possibly happen if Russia started to lose the war. That would be one of Putin's wild cards that he could throw in to stall out the Ukrainians. And then if that doesn't work, he could escalate to carpet bombing. And then if that doesn't work, he could escalate to nuclear, you know. But it's very significant. It means that Russia is losing badly, bad enough that they have to do all these crazy things, you know. Like first of all, this draft that they did is crazy. I mean, they're going to be drafting 1 million Russians. That's insane. There hasn't been any country that drafted that many people since World War II. Even the Korean War, you know, we didn't have like 1 million troops going to Korea, you know. I forget the exact number. It might have been like 100,000 or something. But this is historic, and people don't see it, you know. They think it's just some war in some faraway place, you know. It's a very serious situation. So it shows that Putin is losing, and he's trying to do everything he can to basically slow down the Ukrainians, you know. So, and for Belarus, there's something in it for Belarus, because if they cross the border, obviously Belarus would gain some territory. You know, it would be an incentive for Belarus to get involved because they could expand their territory. And also, Putin has protected Belarus, and Belarus is like a satellite country of Russia. So I think he wants Belarus to have skin in the game now and kind of like earn their keep, you know, because he's been protecting them. He also gave money to Belarus. He loaned, like a couple of years ago, Belarus was on the verge of an economic collapse. It was actually not long ago. It was 2 years ago. Belarus was on the verge of an economic collapse, and Putin loaned like a few $1 billion to Belarus. So I think Putin feels like Belarus owes him something for all the missiles he gives to them, all the bailouts and everything, you know. So I think he wants Belarus to basically, you know, earn their keep, you know.
Right. Yeah, I think you're correct on that. You know, countries like Russia aren't that invest in other countries. At some point, you know, you got to pay the piper, and so I think you're right on that, and that's what we're seeing here. And so, I'll make sure that we're keeping our comments nice, guys. Moderators, be looking over there for me. So here's the big question tonight. So we've talked about the Nord Stream 1 and 2. We've talked about what's happened with the bridge. We've talked about this buildup coming out of Belarus. And so, you know, like I said, the main question that I'm going to be asking concerning this is, where do you think all of this is going to lead? We see that, you know, Putin is kind of like a dog being backed into a corner with no real escape route. And that was what somebody in the comments earlier had kind of made a comment about. What about peace? Why is nobody, you know, trying to go for peace? Why no one's pursuing that? Ukrainians aren't pursuing peace. The United States isn't pursuing peace. NATO is not pursuing peace. Russians are definitely not pursuing. So peace is not on the table. It seems like, or at least that's the narrative that's being put out there, is that peace is not on the table. And so we see that Putin, that nobody's making an exit ramp for Putin. So he's being backed into this corner. And so at some point, something is going to have to give. And so what is your thought on this? What do you think could potentially happen down the road? Are we looking at a potential red October? Today's October 11th. Are we in the realm of possibility of a red October, or do you think that this thing may carry on a few more months before we actually might get some type of a true reaction? My personal opinion is we might see a little bit more back and forth, kind of what we've seen the last 48 hours before something massive happens. But what is your personal opinion on this?
I'm an eternal optimist. So naturally, I'm a very optimistic person. It's just the way I am. But I've known since the beginning of this war, since it started, I knew that it wasn't going to end well, and that as soon as I saw the tanks, the Russian tanks crossing the border, that's when I knew that we were going to be going down some very long and bumpy roads. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people here in the U.S. that are very optimistic, including a lot of generals. A lot of the generals are they're very smart people, and they're very experienced with war, so they know what they're talking about. But, the realist in me says that, Putin is not just going to back down. This is basically his whole life, he lives for this. If you read about Putin, he joined the KGB when he was 17 years old. Okay. That was like his dream, was to be a spy and work for the KGB. As soon as he turned 17 and he was old enough to apply for a job at the KGB, that was the first thing he did. He didn't go to college. He didn't do anything else. That was the first thing he wanted to do. As soon as he got old enough, he applied to work at the KGB. So that gives you a little insight into his mentality and also loyalty to the Soviet Union. In order to rise to the rank of lieutenant colonel, which is what he was, and then he was eventually appointed the head of the KGB by Yeltsin in the late 90s. He was the head of the KGB for like a year or two. You have to be unquestionably loyal to the Soviet Union in order to have the assignments that he was given. We're not talking about, even like the CIA here in the United States now, you have to do lie detectors every 6 months to make sure that you're not spying, that you're not a double agent. And that's here in the United States. They have very, very strict background checks. It can take years for you to pass a background check to work for the CIA. And that's 2022 America. Imagine 1970s, 1980s, the height of the Cold War, how strict the Soviet Union and the KGB were when it came to vetting people. They wanted people that were unquestionably loyal, that were going to follow orders. And so for Putin to have been given the assignments he was given, he had to have a passion for it, a true passion. And so, he's stuck in the Soviet Union. That's the problem. The problem is that the USSR collapsed 30 years ago, and people have moved on. A lot of countries in Eastern Europe are now flourishing. They have beautiful, vibrant cities, great standards of living. And Russia is still struggling. They have some of the highest poverty rates in the world, the highest alcoholism rates in the world, some of the highest AIDS rates in the world. And why is that? Because their leader doesn't want to move forward. He cannot let go of those glory days, And so this is everything that he lives for. He's 70 years old now, and his big dream was to restore the Soviet Union. So he's not just going to quit now. I mean, he's already gone beyond the point of no return anyway. He's already crossed every single red line almost, except using nuclear weapons or chemical weapons, which he's already used in other places like Chechnya, Syria. But he's crossed almost every red line. He's already sanctioned, So what does he have to lose if he uses nukes on Ukraine? I think that he could easily escalate it a lot more if he wants to. And so that's what I'm concerned about. I'm afraid that he could use nuclear weapons on Ukraine. And this is something that I felt from the beginning, because if you look at the bigger picture, there's no way that Russia can win conventionally, because the entire Western world is behind Ukraine, and the Western world has more military equipment, more economic power. And so for Ukraine, Ukraine is basically getting an unlimited supply of weapons. They're getting bailouts. So for them, it's like, they don't have to worry about running out of equipment. They don't have to worry about their economy collapsing. But Russia, on the other hand, they cannot afford to continue this war forever. Putin wants this war to end quick, because as time goes on, his economy is bleeding every single day. He's losing Russians. Russians are leaving. Every day there's thousands and thousands of Russians that are leaving because of the sanctions, because of the draft. And so people are leaving. There's sanctions on his economy. So time is running out for him. He cannot carry on this war for another year, 2 years. His economy is going to collapse. He's going to deplete his military. So I think he's going to look for a quick fix. And, it's kind of like, I use the analogy of like pulling weeds in your yard. You have your yard and you have weeds everywhere. You can go around and pick them by hand, which takes more work and it's not as fun. Or you can just get a bottle of, pesticide and just spray the weeds and kill them, which is much faster. So I think he's at the point where he's already tried to pull the weeds by hand, and he's tired and exhausted, and I think he's ready to use nukes, in my opinion. I hope it doesn't come to that, but it's something that we should be prepared for. There's also a lot of prophecy that relates to that. There's one particular prophecy. I'm always very skeptical about a lot of prophecies, especially when you hear them on the internet, because, there's always people out there trying to make a buck. But there's this guy that he was a pastor in Kiev, a Protestant pastor by the name of Pastor Barnett, Philip Barnett. And in 2007, he released the Azov Manna prophecy. This was 2007, before Russia even invaded Georgia. This was 15 years ago. And he said that God showed him what would happen to Ukraine. And he said that there would be two massive evacuations from Ukraine. First, there would be a massive evacuation when Russia tries to invade. And he said, and God showed him that Western Ukraine would be a sanctuary for Christian Ukrainians escaping from the wrath of Putin. And he didn't mention Putin in his prophecy, but basically the Russian, military, and then, which is basically what's happening. I mean, Western Ukraine is like a safe haven. And then in the prophecy, there's another part of it where, missiles start, nuclear bombs hit all the major cities in Ukraine, 8 of them. And apparently they're Russian nukes. And there's a huge evacuation right before that. There's like millions of people that evacuate from Kiev. And this is all apparently what God showed him. He was a pastor in Kiev for 20 years. He's originally from Oklahoma, and he had a mission there, Christian mission. Mm-hmm. And then later on, his prophecy goes on that after those bombs go off in Ukraine, then there's a nuclear exchange between Russia and the U.S. And then Russia tries to go down into Israel and attack Israel. And then obviously we know how that goes. They fail. But that's his prophecy. And, that's just something to think about. But for Putin, he could back down. I mean, it's possible that he just backs down. That would be the best case scenario if there could be some kind of a peace, or Putin just gives up and that's it. But I just don't see how Putin would just sit back and do nothing if Ukraine starts nibbling away at all that land. He lost how many troops, how many tanks, and it would just be humiliating for his ego around the world. People would look at him like he's a total loser. He went in, he lost, 100,000 men, 3,000 tanks, and now Ukraine is just going to take all that back. So, he doesn't want to be humiliated. He doesn't want to look weak. When you're a dictator like that on the world stage, you have to project power. You can't show weakness. So I think the temptation for him to nuke Ukraine is very high. The question is, how would America respond to that? How would NATO respond to that? And at that point, it could escalate into a possible nuclear war, either full nuclear war, or it could be a limited nuclear war where Russia launches maybe 5 or 10 nukes at NATO and America, and then we launch 5 or 10 back, and then that's it, because we don't want to totally escalate and annihilate each other, the whole planet. But there's all different kinds of possibilities, but I'm very concerned that he's going to use weapons of mass destruction on Ukraine pretty soon, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree that, we could definitely see a significant acceleration in these things. There's a question here, and I put it up on the screen by Eleanor R. She's asking, do you think he's going to activate military robots? Do you think Russia even has that kind of technology?
They do, actually. In Syria, Russia used these drones. They were automated, they weren't like robots, but they were like these little mini tanks. I'm trying to think of a good way to, about the size of a bobcat, like a skid steer, like a bobcat. They were about the size of like a bobcat, but they had like a machine gun on it and different types of optical equipment, thermal sensors and stuff. And they were fully automated. I don't know if they were AI or if they were remotely controlled, but there was no people in it. They were just like these mini tanks, like the size of a bobcat, and they used them in Syria to basically go into these urban areas, because urban fighting is very bloody. It gives the defender a huge advantage, and so Russia sent in these little bobcats, these automated bobcats with machine guns on them to clear out the urban areas in Syria. So they did use them. I don't know how many they have, though. I mean, maybe they only have a few. I would be highly skeptical if they have like a massive army of Terminators or something. I don't think. I mean, we've seen a lot of people don't understand that Russia, their economy is the same size as Texas. Okay, Their economy is very small. They don't have the money to spend on these exotic projects. Like the United States. We spend 10 to 20 times more on defense than Russia and China combined. So, you got to watch out for the propaganda. There's a lot of Russians they invented propaganda basically. So they're really good at making it seem like they have all these capabilities when they don't. But what they do have is Putin inherited the nuclear arsenal from the USSR,
Yeah.
And that's the biggest threat. I'm not worried about their army. I'm not worried about their navy. I'm not worried about their hypersonics. I'm worried about their nukes, That's anything else we could deal with, but the nukes, that's a tough one.
Right. And that's kind of, I'm kind of wondering the same thing you are, if and when Putin decides to do that. I think the consensus and what the narrative anyway that's being put out there is that if one is used, it's going to be tactical, chances are. And I think that, I'm kind of wondering the same thing you are. What's the United States' response going to be to this? Some people believe that once there could be a preemptive strike and then NATO will have to kind of figure out, or some believe that Putin may just go straight in and just do it. And then what's the United States going to do? And there's a couple of different factors to consider when we think about this, because for starters, Ukraine is not a NATO member. And so if we are going to stick with a charter then obviously the United States would have no authority to get involved in this because Ukraine, as of now, is not a NATO member, although it is they are trying to become a NATO member, and that is being supposedly being fast tracked. And so we'll see what happens there. But is it possible that the United States may not even respond at all? Who knows? And then other people believe that we could have this crazy, insane back and forth of nuclear exchange. And I personally, and I talked about this last week, that's one area I personally don't think would happen. Just because when we look at end time scripture with the Bible and everything, the scriptures tell us that that God will shorten the days for the elect's sake, which the elect's sake is anyone who believes in Jesus Christ. Because if he doesn't do that, mankind would, blow itself up. So we kind of see that to a certain extent, God's going to stop it at that point. And so, I'm not too sure what the world's response would be. One thing that I did find interesting is because, like I said a second ago, everybody was kind of looking for Russia to do this preemptive thing, maybe even test out a tactical nuke. But Russia hasn't done that yet. But oddly enough, North Korea did. They did it a couple of times this week, which was very interesting. We're all looking at Russia, but North Korea actually tested out some of their tactical nukes and were successful. And then, matter of fact, this evening, it's coming out that North Korea has officially enshrined the right to use preemptive nuclear strikes to protect itself in a new law that the leader Kim Jong-un said makes nuclear status irreversible. And so this actually, and this is what the state media have reported on Friday, but it came out just as you and I were talking this evening. And so, that's kind of a loaded statement there that I'm going to hand over to you and get your thoughts on everything that I just mentioned there, Greg.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, it's important to understand that the Russian military doctrine, the nuclear doctrine, every country has a nuclear doctrine. And what that is what are the criteria for using nuclear weapons? Every country has it. What are the conditions that are needed for nuclear weapons to be used? We have it. Russia has it. Every country that's a nuclear armed power has that. Okay. And so Russia's nuclear doctrine is different from ours in that they don't distinguish between nuclear weapons for strategic purposes versus tactical, meaning that they, like, for example, in the United States, we, in our nuclear doctrine right now, maybe during World War II it was different, but in our nuclear doctrine now, we don't necessarily allow the use of tactical nuclear weapons in very extreme circumstances. But in Russian nuclear doctrine, it's basically they see tactical nuclear weapons as nothing really that's like that bad. They see it as just an extension of the battlefield. It's not. In other words, they don't think that tactical nuclear weapons are any different than carpet bombing or traditional explosive ordnance, So, obviously it makes it a lot easier to use when you have that mentality, when you think, that nukes are not really that big of a deal to use one. So their doctrine says that they could use nuclear weapons to de-escalate a conflict, just like how the U.S. used nukes on Hiroshima to basically stop the Japanese from it continuing to attack us, and it definitely worked. So that's a classic example of using nuclear weapons to de-escalate a conflict. And so that's what Russia has in their nuclear war doctrine. It specifically says, you can go on the Russian Ministry of Defense website. It lists every condition needed to use nuclear weapons in it. And one of them says they could use them to de-escalate a conflict that threatens Russian interests. It doesn't say Russian security. It just says Russian interest and Russian integrity. So, that right there just tells you that, they for them, it's not a big deal to use it. It's just a matter of, is the risk worth the reward? If they see that the West is not going to do anything about it, and there's not going to be much punishment for it, it's just going to be sanctions, then it's like a green light,
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's possible because of that. But yeah, as far as American response goes, or NATO response, here's the thing: even though Ukraine is not part of NATO, they could theoretically say that because the nuclear bombs are detonated right next to NATO, the fallout could go into a NATO country like Romania. I mean, Romania's right there. I mean, Romania's like right next to Crimea and not too far from the front lines. NATO could possibly say that, okay, the fallout is going to blow onto us, so we're gonna go in, we're gonna do something. That's one scenario. Although I don't think that would I don't think that would happen, because I don't think he's going to use the type of nukes that would really generate a lot of radiation. I mean, he could. It's
Right.
really, honestly, depends on how sick and twisted he is. I mean, if he really wants to contaminate Ukraine with radiation, he could just ground burst all the warheads. Or if he doesn't want to contaminate it, then he can use airburst weapons. And when there's an airburst warhead, there's no fallout at all. There's hardly any radiation, because the weapon is detonated like several kilometers above the ground, so the fireball doesn't come into contact with anything. It's just the massive pressure wave from the detonation is what causes the damage to a large area. But because it's detonated above the ground, it doesn't generate any fallout. So he could use air-bursted warheads to avoid that, so there's no radiation, because it's also next to Russia. So if he detonates any kind of ground-bursted warhead, the chances of fallout coming into Russia are very high. So I think he could just use air-bursted weapons to avoid the radiation component. So I don't think NATO would have a justification in that sense, because there wouldn't be much radiation. But I mean, they don't need to have a justification. They could just say, oh, listen, this is a human tragedy. There's 200,000 people killed, and we're going to go in because, we can't just sit back and do nothing. So it's really hard to say. I mean, we've never been in this situation before.
Right.
A lot of people are optimistic. Oh, Putin's not going to use a nuke and whatever. But there's a few different options that the U.S. has. From listening to several retired generals, for example, like David Petraeus, he said that what they would possibly do is attack all the Russian troops that are in Ukraine and all the Russian military hardware in Ukraine, and completely destroy it in like a massive conventional attack. No nukes, but just basically destroying Russian military infrastructure in Ukraine, air defenses, radars, bases, ammunition depots. They could target the Russian troops themselves, although I don't think they would unless there's like some kind of an imminent threat or something to NATO. But I think that they would. I think possibly what they would do is just go after the hardware, because it's much easier to avoid a nuclear escalation if all you do is bomb the hardware. You bomb the physical structures. You're not targeting Russian troops. You're targeting the bases, the radar sites, the air defenses, the tanks. That's what I think they would do. Possibly go after the hardware. There's also like 15,000 U.S. troops on the border of Ukraine, right over the border in Poland, just 5 miles over the border. There's 15,000 U.S. Army troops there.
Uh-huh.
So they could also move those troops into Ukraine possibly, and kind of like block Russia from taking more of Ukraine and say, listen, you know, now we're going to move in and we're going to move our troops in.
Yeah.
That's something that could happen. Or they could just sit back and do nothing and you know, they could do nothing, and then who knows, you might find out in a year or two that Putin just spontaneously dies from a bunker buster, you know, like Soleimani did. I mean, there's all kinds of technology that the U.S. has that we don't even know. I mean, we don't even scratch the surface. I mean, they could have some kind of advanced weapons that they could try to basically take out Putin directly rather than possibly escalating by striking, you know, his troops and stuff, you know.
Right. Yeah, it's really kind of hard to tell just exactly what'll happen. You know, there's a lot of different scenarios. There's also the scenario that that nothing may happen in Ukraine. And I say that because the whole purpose of really Russia taking Ukraine, as one, it used to be part of Russia back in the day. Secondly, it's that Ukraine has a lot of resources that Russia doesn't have. You know, you had stated earlier in the broadcast that Russia is poor, you know, and that their you know, level of living is not, their standard of living, I should say, isn't quite like the rest of the world, and so there's a lot of resources, and so it doesn't seem to serve Russia very well for Putin to go in and do that to Ukraine. But we also know that Russia has other technologies like its sub program, its Poseidon missiles, its you know, Satan II missiles, things like that. Which you know, let's just hypothetically say that was used out in the Atlantic or out in the Pacific or out in the Gulf of Mexico, for example, and that was used against the United States, then that would be a very different, dramatic change in the scenario that we have mentioned here tonight. And so, like I said, we don't know where this is going to go. What's going to happen, and we don't claim to be experts on here tonight. Everything that we're talking about tonight is, you know, hypothetical. It's you know, it's just kind of just talking tonight on what could take place. I do want to give some shout outs real quick here on the channel. We do have 185 in the chat room tonight, 185. So if you guys are on, please give us a like, share, subscribe here to Daily Excellence and to New York Prepper's channel. We've got Always Loyal that's joined us, Patricia Thomas, Roxanne Miller, Michelle, Yanel Castile. I hope I didn't butcher your name. I'm sorry if I did. God Soldier Ministry has joined us. Let's see. MKL 1425 has joined us. Gigi Green Eye, Lady Green Eyes is on with us tonight. Abba's Girl, and a lot of others have joined us. Hector 777, Miguel is with us tonight, and so just wanted to kind of put a little shout out to everybody that's coming in this evening. And if at any time, if you guys have any questions, we may not be able to get to all of them tonight. But make sure that you guys put those in the chat room for us, and so we can do that. Zeus has just joined us as well, and so all of the people that are coming on tonight, and we're trying to do something a little bit new on this broadcast. Every once in a while, try to kind of pin up some of you guys' comments here on the video, so everyone gets a chance to see it tonight. And so it's something a little bit new that we're testing out this evening. And so thank you all moderators for helping out this evening and continuing your good work. For those of you that are just coming on, we have New York Greg with New York Prepper that is with us this evening. Earth Changes Channel says, thank you, Brother Greg. A lot of information that you have given us tonight, brother. God bless you and your family. Be safe in Pennsylvania. So that's coming from Earth Changes Channel there. So Greg, as we move forward in all of this, we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit this evening. Let's talk about the winter that's coming up tonight, or not, not tonight, but the winter that's coming up this season. Because we wanted to, when we were planning this out, we kind of wanted to touch base a little bit about the winter season that's happening, and also for the grand solar minimum tonight. And the odd thing about this, I think, in some weird kind of way, Greg, some of this I feel like might be intertwined. I don't know what your thoughts on that is, but we do know you and I have had conversations back and forth over the last couple of weeks about how early the frosts are coming in, how early the cold weather is moving in. We've got an Arctic blast that's getting ready to come down. You had put up on your channel the Arctic isosceles graph that's showing some changes coming up in the next few weeks. And so what's your take on what's coming up for the winter season that we're coming into at breakneck speed?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound like too doom and gloom, but basically this winter is going to be colder than last winter, that's for sure. We're heading into what's known as a La Nina, and not just any La Nina, but a triple La Nina, which is very rare. And a La Nina, if you guys don't know what that is just ocean currents. And what they do is it happens when cold water upwells from the depths of the ocean in the tropical Pacific. And because that cold water upwells, it's caused by the trade winds. The trade winds blow along the surface of the ocean, and when they blow on the surface of the ocean, it causes the cold water to upwell. It's kind of like blowing a fan on, it's like when you're blowing on like a hot cup of tea to try to cool it down. That's basically what happens, and it's a natural cycle. It's been going on for forever. Even the Mayans were very cognizant of the La Nina and El Nino. They knew about the trade winds and stuff and how it affects the climate and growing seasons. So when there's a La Nina, it causes global temperatures to drop. And normally La Ninas, they last for a couple of months, and then they go away, and then they come back another year or two later. And it's just like a cycle. It's kind of random. Nobody knows what causes them, how they start, what causes them to start. Nobody knows that. But we do know that when there is a La Nina, global temperatures drop usually a few degrees, and it causes Arctic air to spill from the poles into the mid-latitudes, which can cause, extremely cold temperatures in temperate zones, and even in tropical areas, as far south as Florida, for example. So we're in a triple La Nina now, which, that's definitely not good for, as far as, going into winter on a third La Nina. That's not a good thing. We can already see the effects of it because of the early start to fall. I mean, September was really cold. I mean, we already had a light frost in like the second week of September. We already had a light frost, which is pretty rare. Normally the frosts come in like October, early October, so it was like a month earlier. So, I'm not trying to make it seem like, there's going to be an ice age, but it's going to probably be below average in terms of temperatures, colder temperatures, more snow in certain areas. So we need to make sure we're prepared for that. So yeah, that's why I'm concerned about this winter, because of that. And then obviously the grand solar minimum is another thing. So.
Yeah, we have been sending pictures back and forth to each other, and like you, we in September, actually, the end of August, we started here in the Great Lakes region. We started getting temperatures in the 40s at night already, And then once September rolled in, we got a couple of 30-degree nights. We had frost, and now it's early October. We've already had 2 freezes, and we've already been in the 20s here. And now we got this Arctic vortex that's coming down next week, and we've got snow in the forecast. And so everything is running about 2 weeks ahead of schedule. That seems to have kind of been the theme this whole year, is that everything is running 2 or more weeks ahead of schedule. We also, like you said, we have a triple La Nina, which is very rare. And you had wrote me that the last time that we had a triple La Nina was back around, I think you said it was around 2009 to 2011 period.
Correct. Yep.
And so if you guys kind of remember that time period, that was the last triple La Nina that we have. But we also have solar minimum that we're dealing with. And I know right now everybody's kind of like, well, solar minimum, we're getting a lot of activity coming from the sun, which we have been. We've had a lot taking place, but we're each cycle, and I think we're at solar cycle 25. Am I correct on that?
Yes, that's correct. Yep. And we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But a lot of professionals are saying that the solar cycle is going to be reduced this time around, and then the next few cycles will be a little bit reduced. So that could cause global cooling. The last time there was a solar minimum was around 1400 to 1600. There was something known as the Maunder minimum, and it's very interesting to read about. If you just search Maunder minimum, it was a solar minimum for like 200 years, and it caused the Little Ice Age, which was a period of global cooling, and it was so cold that in London, there's that river that goes through London, which now normally never freezes. It would freeze so solid every winter that they would have what are known as frost fairs, where they would have like a flea market on the frozen river. People would set up like little shanties, and they would sell different things. The Baltic Sea would freeze so solidly that you could go from Poland to Sweden on a horse carriage across the entire Baltic Sea. So it was, and that's 100% real. So a lot of people think that, the Little Ice Age happened at the same time as the Maunder minimum. So people think that the solar cycles have an effect on global temperature,
Right.
So I think there is an effect for sure, because, in 2009, 2010, 2011, we had a solar minimum. We were going from one cycle to another, and we were in a solar minimum between 2 cycles. And, that's why it was so cool. And then on top of the La Ninas. But if you look back like at the late 90s and the 2000s up until 2010, there were some of the most active solar cycles in the last 200 years. And if you notice those times, like between like late 90s to 2010, there were some really warm winters, and people were really thinking that there was going to be global warming and all kinds of stuff like that. But if you look at a chart of all the solar cycles in the last 300 years, you'll see that in the 90s and early 2000s, there were like some of the most active solar cycles. So
yeah,
I think there is some kind of a correlation between that,
Yeah, I agree with you there. And just to kind of give a little bit of information on how these solar cycles work. So every solar cycle is 11 years, okay? And what happens is and in that 11-year period, you get a period where the sun is very active, and then the sun begins to quiet down, and we get no sunspots. And so during the very active periods, you get several years of warm temperatures, and then the cooler and the non-active periods, you get temperatures of cooler times. Now, what happens is when you have a low solar activity output, it does affect the Earth. It lowers our resistance to sun rays. We start getting an intrusion of gamma rays, which is what's been happening here on the planet. And it's also known that when we have low periods or low solar cycles, we have more earthquakes, we have more volcanoes that go off, and it causes, because the Earth loses some of its shielding, our magnetosphere takes a hit, we start seeing erratic periods with our jet stream. So in some ways, yes, the Earth's temperature is cooling, but what happens is you start seeing cold air going in places that it shouldn't go in. You start seeing warm air going in places that it shouldn't be. Kind of like right now, we're in a very unusual pattern across the United States, because you have places in the Northwest that are baking right now, while we here in the West and the East are extremely cold. But this is kind of what you would expect, the kind of weather pattern. And when you go back and look at the analogs that go back in the models that run during the period of the last, so to speak, cooling period, which actually the last really cool period that in modern record would be in the 1970s, you'll see that the West Coast and Alaska actually experienced a warm-up period, warmer than average temperatures, while the rest of the United States, including the South, were cooler than they should be, and the Earth's temperature was also lower than it should be as well. And then, of course, because our defenses are low, when we do get into these active periods, which right now we're in solar cycle 25, we are in the high period of this, but because our magnetosphere is low, because of the low cycles that we've been experiencing these last several years, when we do get this activity, we have more intrusion of solar winds, hydrogen coming from the sun, and we see a lot of auroras and things like that. And so it explains a lot of what's happening with our weather patterns. The sun is a very huge driver in our weather patterns. It's a huge driver in our jet stream systems, and it's also theorized that if we get into a low enough cycle, this could also potentially cause our poles to potentially flip, and we'll see a different placement of our Earth. And I know, like, one of the things that Brother Jim over at Earth Changes channel, he's been keeping an eye on the magnetic north and looking for that 40-degree mark, which all that is attributed to what we've been seeing, because it's more than just an 11-year cycle. We have other cycles too that the sun goes through outside of that 11-year cycle. Right now, we're kind of at that period where all these cycles of the sun are combining at one period. And so that's the best way I can explain it. I don't know if you had any other explanations you wanted to give out there, Greg.
Yeah, that was very, very, very good information, very technical. Yeah, I mean, I think that we can clearly see the last 10 years have been a lot colder than the previous 10 years. So I think that trend is going to continue. I think we're going to stay at least as cold as we have been, if not get colder. And I think that it's the science is there. You know, it's funny how the people who claim to be pro-science are the ones that are actually ignoring the science. You know, the global warming crowd.
Right.
They claim to be the science people, you know, that, the science proves that there's global warming. Well, the science is also showing that actually the globe is cooling because of the sun and the La Niñas, but they don't want to believe that because
Right.
It goes against their narrative, you know. But everything you mentioned is just really good information. I agree with you. And I think like I said, I don't see any major warming trends in the next 10 years. No way. We're going to at least stay as cold as we have been, if not get colder. And there's always a lagging effect, you know, if there's like a La Nina or a solar minimum, there's always a little bit of a lag. So you know, I'm sure you probably know, but a lot of times you'll have a La Nina and the La Nina will peak out, and then the temperatures won't drop until like another 2 to 3 months after the La Nina peaks, because, you know, it takes time. It's a chain reaction. You know, it's like, you know, it's like anything else. It's not instantaneous. So, you know, we could possibly be getting a lagging effect. You know, that's something to keep in mind. You know, because there's a lot of people that will just rush to judgment and say, "Oh, it's a La Nina. How come it's not getting cold yet?" Well, it takes time for the dominoes to fall. You know,
Right.
Same thing with the solar minimum. You know, even if there's a reduced solar cycle 25, and I think the maximum is in like 2 years. It's supposed to peak out in 2 years. Even if there's a reduced solar cycle in 2 years from now, there's a little bit of a lagging effect by the time the global temperatures drop after it, you know?
Right.
So that's something to keep in mind.
And that's
so,
and I wanted to add on to that because, you know, you were talking about how the global warmist people, you know, like to kind of debunk what we're talking about. But I want to tell you that, you know, like, for example, I think one person just commented that it's been in the hundreds in California. One of the things that this pattern does is it shifts the climate. And so, like I said, when you look at the analogs, the West Coast is going to be warmer than it should be in this particular pattern. Alaska is going to be warmer than it should be in this particular pattern. So it is going to be hotter in those areas. Even though the Earth is cooling, when we look back in the past analogs, when we have this particular setup, is those areas are warmer. What you also will see is that as that pattern shift is taking place in the Arctic regions, right now we are getting ice melt in both the North and South poles right now, and it is very true. It is happening, but we're also getting a buildup in areas that normally aren't being built, that normally don't get built up. Why? Because things are shifting. You have glaciers that are melting at a very high rate in some areas, but you got glaciers that are also building in other areas, and so you're gonna see this shift take place. But of course, the global warmest people, they're only going to focus on the glaciers that are melting, and they're only going to focus on the Arctic regions that are melting. They're not even going to look at, well, what's melting here is rebuilding over here. Just like, what was it? I forgot what continent. I think it's Greenland that just had the most rapid ice build this year that ever recorded in history, has actually happened in September. And we reported that here on the channel that it was I forgot how many tons of ice. It was, the measurement was really high up in the tons region of new ice that was being built in the month of September. All right, we haven't even gotten into dark winter, and I'm talking about actual dark winter where the sun goes away for 3 months. We hadn't even gotten into that, and ice was already being built in Greenland. Nobody talked about that. I think I was the only channel that actually brought that up. And so, yeah, we're going to definitely be seeing different patterns and things like that taking place. And so what you're used to is going to be different. And everyone's going to have to adjust. Everyone's going to have to migrate and things like that. And so, you know, we've talked a lot. We've talked a lot this evening. We put a lot of different information out there tonight, Greg. But, you know, before we get off of here tonight, what about I want to refocus everybody's attention this evening. You know, we spent quite a bit of time talking about what's going on with Ukraine, and we talked about nuclear weapons and changes in the earth and things like that. And I was reading the comments as you were talking, and, you know, there's definitely a lot of concern for the things that are happening. And, you know, people are definitely worried about what's taking place. But, you know, when we serve in the kingdom of God, when we serve with Jesus Christ, we don't have to worry about the things that are kind of come upon the earth. Matter of fact, when we look at Matthew 24, you know, and we read that whole chapter of Matthew 24, Jesus tells us in his words in the red that when we begin to see all these things come upon the earth, that we are to understand that his time is coming. It's a season, all right? So we know how close the return of Jesus Christ is. We know that we are to lift our heads and look up, for he draws nigh. That's what the scriptures tell us. And so tonight I want to kind of redirect everyone back into faith, back into a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. You know, I know you prep, Greg. I know Earth Changes Channel, who's on tonight, been helping us out. He's got a massive prepping going on. You know, we've done things here in Daily Excellence as well to prep. But as always, when we do these shows with whoever we bring on, we always want to bring people back to what is most important, and that is being spiritually prepped, being spiritually ready for the things to come. You can be physically prepped all you want, but if your spirit's not ready, if your relationship with God is not in par, you got bigger problems than just not having enough food and water. You need that wisdom from God. You need to have a undoubtable and unchangeable faith. And so tonight, we want to kind of just move into that direction and reassure everyone that there is a God in heaven who cares about all of us. Yes, we know we're going through difficult times. God told us in his word, through the words of Jesus Christ, that in these last days we would face the times that we're in, that we would go through these seasons, but not to be weary in this season, not to be overcome by fear in this season, but we are to count all these things as joy. And the reason why we count these things as joy is because we know what's on the other side of all of this. We know what's going to be on the other side of this conflict. We know what's going to be on the other side of all these events that we're about to go through. You know, we know what's on the other side of all this, and the other side of it is the new rulership of Jesus Christ. It's the new millennial kingdom that is to come. And so the whole point of this tonight is that we take the opportunity to make sure that our hearts are right with Jesus Christ, that our faith is where it should be. And maybe tonight you're doubting. Maybe you have some doubts about things that are because of what's going on. I would pray and ask God to help you in your unbelief, help you in your doubt. Be honest with God and say, help me with what I can't understand. Help me to prepare for the things that are to come. Touch my mind, touch my heart, touch my spirit. Don't allow me to be consumed by fear, but instead allow me to be consumed by your Holy Spirit. Let me be consumed by your hope and your love. Brother Jim and I last week, we talked about how love conquers fear. And so a lot's coming upon us. A lot's going to be taking place, but we don't want to give in to the fear of the situation, because fear is not from the Lord, right? Fear is not from God, but fear is from the enemy of our souls, and that is the devil. Fear does not come from God. It's not part of the characteristic of God. That comes from the devil, all right? And really, when you think about the idea of the word fear, fear is one of those things where it's actually unrealized ideas that may or may not come to pass. It's kind of like, it's grouped in the area of worry. And so we're not really supposed to do those things. We're supposed to put all of our cares, put all of our worries in the hands of Jesus Christ, and take up his yoke, for his yoke is light. And so, Greg, did you have anything you want to add in to that tonight?
Yeah, I agree with you. That's really important. Jesus said himself, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden. I will give you rest." And so he wants us to come to him, and it's like if you have a heavy backpack on, 100-pound backpack, you've been hiking all day, and you take that pack off, and it's just such a good feeling. And that's what he wants us to do. He wants us to take our heavy packs off and rest, and come to him, and he'll take that heavy pack off for us and let our backs rest, and put our trust in him. That's really the most important thing. Prepping is great. It's very important, just like working is important, having a job, paying your bills, putting food on the table, all those things are important. But you have to also trust in God. That's the most important thing. Everything comes from Him. So, I couldn't agree with you more. It's easy to get carried away when it comes to prepping and everything that's going on in the world, to really get fixated on the negative things. But there's still a lot of beauty out there, and anytime you feel like there's no hope, or the situation seems hopeless, just get on your knees and pray, and God will protect you, So that's kind of, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, and that's what I try to do as much as possible, because it's easy to get carried away with all the negative news and just, materialism and stuff like that. There's just so many things that are toxic. And so we just have to make sure that we trust in God,
Yeah, and when we focus on just constant news and negativity, it can change our outlook on the world around us. Like you said, there's still a lot of good things in this world. There's still a lot of things to enjoy. The sky's still blue, grass is still green, the birds are still in the air, and so there's a lot of things in this life to enjoy. There's a lot of things in this life to be thankful for as well. Every day that we wake up, all of us that are watching on here, we should be thankful that we're able to draw air into our lungs. And but we can also fall into this trap of being cynical. We can fall into this trap of being bitter when we keep our focus on the things that are going on around us, and we don't take time to step back, take a break, turn off the TV, quit watching CNN, turn off the computer, man, and get in God's word. Spend time praying, spend time worshiping. Let those praise songs wash over your soul. Let the God's word renew your mind, renew your heart, renew your spirit. We need to do those things to really recharge our spiritual battery. Because life itself and the world around us, it drains us. And we have to recharge ourselves so that we don't fall into that trap of negativity, bitterness, lacking of hope. And that's the best way to keep ourselves spiritually prepared, keep yourself spiritually motivated, and to be wise. When we look at both Old and New Testament, we see many scriptures of being wise, being a prudent man. We look at Joseph in the Old Testament, who knew that there was going to be 7 years of plenty and 7 years of drought. But how did Joseph know how to prepare for those things? He knew because he had a relationship with God. He put his trust in God. He put his hope in God. Even though when Joseph, who went through terrible things, brothers betrayed him, threw him in a hole, sold him to slavery. Joseph got, accused of sleeping with Pharaoh's wife, and then he got thrown into prison again. He never let go of that relationship with God. And because of that, God was able to give Joseph dreams. Joseph was able to give Joseph a plan on how to survive what they were going to be going through in that time. We see the same thing with Noah when he built the ark, when the flood was coming. Same scenario. Noah was a righteous man. He had that relationship with God, and God helped Noah to be a prudent person, put things together, and make it through those hard times. And we're all in this season, in these last days. We have to have that relationship with God. We have to continue to do our part, no matter how bad things get around us. And we're going to go through some stuff. It's going to be rough. But no matter how bad it gets, we need to make sure that we don't lose our faith. As Brother Jim over at Earth Changes Channel would say, make sure that you don't take a spiritual vacation. This ain't the time to do it. But make sure that you're keeping your spiritual life up to snuff. Make sure that you don't let go of that relationship. That way, you can be a prudent man or woman in this season, and God will see you through it. And no matter what happens, by life or by death, because we may face that, all is well with your soul. And when you know that all is well with your soul, it doesn't matter. It don't matter what happens to you. It really doesn't. because you know where you're going and you know what's coming. And that is a peace that surpasses all understanding. So, Greg, thank you so much for accepting my invitation to come on tonight. I think we covered a lot of subjects this evening. I think the people have enjoyed having you on here at Daily Excellence, and just want to thank you for being on here tonight.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate you putting this together and having me on. I had a great time. It's good to put our minds together. It's important, you know.
Yeah, and I think in the future we'll probably do this again. You know, as things take place and as things break out, we'll be here to keep everybody going. I know that you and Brother Jim are planning on getting together and working as well, and so we'll probably wait until after you guys have had a chance to do something, and then we'll plan on getting back together and doing another broadcast together. So, but I think it went very well, and very honored to have you on here tonight. So,
thanks for having me on. I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. We'll see you on the next go around.
All right, take care, everybody. Have a great night.
Good night, sir. All right, so that was Greg with NYPrepper, and so he spent the evening with us here on Daily Excellence. Very grateful that he was able to do that. And thank you guys all so much for coming on tonight. Please remember to subscribe to the channel. You know, we're on every single weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday with devotionals and content from Mike from around the world at Council of Time. We also broadcast on Tuesdays here live, and of course you can join us on our backup channel at Daily Direction with Pastor Anthony. We are also coming to you tonight live on Rumble. So those of you that are watching us at Rumble, thank you for being with us this evening. And, of course, we're also on Odysee. We're also over at Brighteon and Telegram. Don't forget Telegram, guys. We put out a ton of information over at Telegram at Daily Excellence News, Daily Excellence Chat Room. And if you're in need of prayer, you need somebody to lift you up in prayer, we've got 200 people plus that are over there. We've got Kate, who's an administrator over at Council of Time, has been partnering up with us and helping us run that over there. And so she's done a great job keeping things going over there for us. And so, of course, check out our website at DailyExcellence.org. And if you would like to support this ministry, you can support us at PayPal. Our link is in the description below. And, of course, if you'd like to help us out monthly, you can do that over on Patreon as well. And, of course, we do have a link in the description box for those of you that would like to subscribe over to NYPrepper. He's available, and he's got several links in his on his channel as well for you to check out. And so with that being said, everyone, have a great evening. God bless you. Thank you so much for being on here tonight. Hippie Girl, good to see you. Hippie Girl, if you go over, she says she can never find the chat rooms on Telegram. If you download that app, if you can do one of two things, you can click on the link that we have in our descriptions box, or you can go into the search and type out Daily Excellence Chat Room, Daily Excellence Newsroom, Daily Excellence Prayer Room, and it should come up over there for you. So you can do one of those two areas over there. I see that Lakes has put up the link to NYPrepper's channel, so you guys can click on that and go subscribe over there. Thank you, Patricia Thomas, for coming on. Dan, good to have you on tonight. Connie, thank you very much for being here. Gypsy Lizzie, thank you. Thank you for all of our moderators that were on here tonight. BJ and Lakes 10,000 and Christina was over here tonight. And so thank you guys so much for coming on and helping us out with the chat this evening. Thank you, Jimmy, for being on. Always loyal. It was good to have you on. Michelle, it was good to have you on. And so With that being said, everyone, God bless you. Have a good night. We'll see you this weekend with the premieres. Bye, everyone.